Okay, thanks everyone.
So welcome everyone to the public scoping meeting for the Bears Ears National Monument Resource Management Plan and Environmental Impact Statement for September 21st, 2022. The meeting will begin shortly, so thank you for your patience as we wait for others to join. Okay, and then for those who are just joining us, welcome to the public scoping meeting for the Bears Ears National Monument Resource Management Plan and Environmental Impact Statement for September 21st, 2022. We'll be starting shortly. Thanks for your patience as we wait for folks to join. As you're joining us, please join using your computer audio. And if you're having any issues accessing your audio, please use the question and answer portal in Zoom to share your issues with our technical team. To access the live transcript of this meeting, please look at the bottom of your screen where you can click Live Transcript and then select Show Subtitle. And just please note that this meeting is being recorded. So my name is Sarah Lupus, and I will be the facilitator for today's meeting. First, I'd like to share with you the agenda that we have for this event. So first, we're going to review some meeting logistics and participation guidelines. Then we'll do some introductions. Then we have a presentation from the BLM and USDA Forest Service. And we have a question and answer session that will follow the presentation, and then some closing remarks and next steps. We've just begun the presentation, and you can also access these slides on your screen as a PDF on the EPlanning website, which is in the chat, but I'll share it with you aloud here. It's https://eplanning.blm.gov/project/2020/347/510. So just a few meeting logistics and participation guidelines to help the meeting go smoothly for everyone. So your microphones and videos for participants will remain off. Questions will be received using the Q&A feature in Zoom. You can submit questions throughout the presentation, but answers will not be answered live until the question and answer session that follows this presentation. If you're having any technical issues with your Zoom features, please use the Q&A feature to contact the technical team. And again, please note that this meeting is being recorded and will be posted to the EPlanning project website. Now I'd like to turn it over to Nicole and Ryan to introduce the BLM and USDA Forest Service teams. Nicole?
Thank you, Sarah. Good afternoon, everyone. We have quite a few participants. This is really exciting. So thank you so much for joining us for our first virtual scoping meeting. And we hope to see you at some of our in-person meetings as well, if you're able to make it. I want to introduce the BLM team, the Bureau of Land Management team, which is just a very small subset of all the people that are involved in this process and those who are helping to create this plan and to make it the best it can be. And you as the public are others who are really helping us to build this plan. But for the BLM, I want to introduce to you Jake Palma, who is the Monticello Field Office Manager and Monument Manager. Scott Whiteside is the project manager for the Bears Ears program as a whole. We have Rachel Wooten, who is our public affairs specialist. We have Jared Lundell, whose specialty is cultural resources and tribal concerns. Let's see if Jared popped up there. We have Robert James, who will be focusing on paleontology, minerals, and geology. Misty Haynes is recreation, travel, lands with wilderness characteristics, and ACCs. We have Melissa Wardell, who is our wildlife specialist. Josh Ralph will be handling fire management, woodlands, and forestry. Jed Carling will be our grazing specialist. And Silas Sparks is visual and wild and scenic rivers. And there are many, many others behind the scenes that help out with this process. These are our key players that you'll be interacting with today and throughout this entire process. So I'm hoping that getting a face to the name really helps to help you feel comfortable in providing your input to us today. And I will pass it over to Ryan Neal so he can introduce his team.
Great, thanks, Nicole. Echo a lot of your comments that you made there. Just want to welcome people to this virtual public meeting, and hopefully it goes smoothly on your end. We put some practice into this, so hopefully it comes through today with our presentations and with our Q&A. So really appreciate you joining. I'm Ryan Neal. I'm the Forest Supervisor here. I've been here about 4 years on the Mantella Sound. My office is up here in Price, Utah, but I do get down to the greater Bears Ears area quite frequently. In fact, it's probably my favorite area on the forest, and probably shouldn't say that to everybody, but it is. So here's my team. Michael Engelhart, he is out on a fire assignment and helping our partners out in Idaho on a fire on the Sawtooth National Forest. He's a district ranger. He's also the Forest Service Monument Manager for that portion that's on Forest Service lands, including the Bears Ears Buttes. Autumn Ela, she is heavily engaged with our forest plan, and there is a connectedness and interface with our forest planning efforts. So Autumn's here today. I've got Charmaine Thompson. She is representing cultural resources and our tribal liaison on the forest. Zach Lowe is representing recreation and special designations. Barb Smith is has the wildlife and fish resources. Connor Eckhout is the forestry contact, and Daniel Lay is our hydrology specialist for this effort. Thank you.
Thanks, Nicole and Ryan. Lauren Henson, would you like to introduce the Bears Ears Commission?
Sure. My name is Lauren Henson. I'm the Collaborative Management and Tribal Support Specialist for the Bears Ears Intertribal Coalition, and we support the Bears Ears Commission. The commission is a collaborative group of 5 sovereign tribal nations tasked with the management of Bears Ears National Monument. And commissioners serve also as a representative of their tribal nation. Today we have Commissioner Hank Stevens from the Navajo Nation and Commissioner Craig Andrews from the Hopi tribe representing the commission today on the call. And at this time, we'd like to invite the commissioners to say a few words if they wish.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay. I'm trying to keep up with all this technology here, but thank you, everybody, for joining. I was a little bit late, but I guess I didn't miss too much. But my name is Craig Andrews. I am from the village of Sept Mesa here in northern Arizona. I am from the village of Masangnavi and also Bear Clan. Just a little bit about myself is I'm currently the vice chairman of the Hopi tribe, honorably serving our tribe, and also just been in this position, my capacity as vice chairman since December. I got sworn in December. And at the time, got into the Bears Ears Commission as my predecessor was before me. So I'm here and I'm glad to be here. And, you know, if there's any other questions or if there's questions for me later on, I'll be happy to answer them. But I'll go ahead and hand it off to Ms. Henson. And thank you so much, everybody. Kwekwe.
Thank you, Vice Chairman. Mr. Andrews, would you like to, or sorry, Mr. Stevens, would you like to say anything?
Yes, thank you, Lauren. And then thank you. I'd like to thank the folks from the agencies putting on this session for us today. And then also like to thank our predecessors that were actually a member of the Bears Ears Intertribal Coalition, which actually spearheaded the national monument, back in 2016. With that, my name is Hank Stevens. I'm from the Navajo Reservation. I do have a Navajo name that was actually bestowed on me when I was born. My Navajo name is actually Tole, meaning in translation, it's purity or clear. So with that, I was born out in Navajo Mountain, and I wasn't born in a hospital. I was actually born in a cornfield where my grandmother actually bestowed that name on me when I was born, and came into the world with the spiritual water to actually provide entry into this beautiful world that we live in today. Then also was provided my spiritual being to this day that provides my ability to live here on earth, which also provided the essentials here for life. And also some of the teaching that actually that I was raised into from my indigenous culture. At this point in time, I do actually represent the mine management committee with the Grand Staircase Escalante National Monument, and also still involved with the Navajo Nation political arena. And with that, I'd like to thank everyone again for being on this call, and welcome to this call. Thank you.
Thank you, commissioners, and thank you, Lauren. So Lauren, would you like to introduce the Bears Ears Commission staff?
Sure. These are representatives from the Bears Ears Intertribal Coalition, and we're basically support staff for the commission. And these are people that you can also contact if you have additional comments beyond this comment period. And it's myself, Hillary Hoffman, who is the co-director, Keisha Ignacio is the operations director, and Ruben Pacheco, who is our communications and partnerships director.
Thanks, Lauren. So now I'd like to turn it over to Jake Palma for an introduction to the project.
All righty, thank you, Sarah, and thank you to the Bears Ears commissioners who have joined us today and our partners there at the Forest Service. It's a unique opportunity that all of us have to work together to develop this management plan for Bears Ears National Monument. And so I'm going to kind of go over a little bit of history and the process moving forward. Where are we at and what needs to happen to get us to a management plan. So I'm going to maybe ask Sarah if I'm going to jump around a little bit on these slides more than the order that they're in. So if I can jump maybe to the next slide first, and I'll give just a brief overview of where we've been. This Bears Ears National Monument's been kind of an up and down roller coaster over the last few years. But back in 2016, I think it was you, Commissioner Hank Stevens, that brought up that this is when the monument was designated. Originally, it was December 2016, but it really represents many, many years of work and effort from tribal nations, indigenous people who have come together with a shared goal of protecting this landscape. So the culmination of some of that work was the designation of Bears Ears National Monument and the need for the federal agencies to engage with tribal nations, to integrate traditional knowledge into the way we manage this landscape, and just develop that relationship in a way that perhaps has never been done in this country between the BLM Forest Service and tribal nations. In 2017, just about a year later, the Bears Ears National Monument, the boundaries were modified. It was, the boundaries became a lot smaller. So it went from, about 1.35 million acres down to about 200,000 acres with two separate units of the monument. So there was a unit in the Indian Creek area and then a unit down, it was called the Shashja unit of Bears Ears National Monument. And then just about, 2.5 years ago, there were some management plans that were developed in an effort to protect the objects and values of those two units of Bears Ears National Monument from the 2017 proclamation. And so that management plan was approved in February of 2020. And those plans still exist today and are still the management plan in place for those portions of the monument until we have this new management plan developed. And then in just about a year ago, we're coming up, if you can believe it or not, it's a year anniversary of when President Biden issued Proclamation 10285, which restored the boundaries of Bears Ears National Monument. And if you go back one slide, Sarah, to the maps, or is it forward one slide? I think forward one slide to the maps. There you go. So that map on the left there, it shows the three different versions of Bears Ears National Monument. And you can kind of see in that area just to the, if you're familiar with this area, Indian Creek, you can see that blue hash mark in there. So the original monument, the new monument includes 11,200 acres or so, right there in that area that the original proclamation from 2016 did not include, but the 2017 proclamation included. And so that has been added to the boundaries. And so you can see this is on the right-hand side today, the boundaries of Bears Ears National Monument. And that is the planning area for which we will be developing this management plan for Bears Ears National Monument. And you'll see a few kind of cutouts in that map. One of those is Natural Bridges National Monument. And the other one is BLM lands that are just not part of Bears Ears National Monument outside of Blanding and White Mesa community there. But there's also some you can see scattered throughout there these little blue squares. So there's state lands that are in the boundaries of Bears Ears National Monument, and then there's a handful of private inholdings as well. But our planning decisions lie within federal lands in the forest and the BLM lands. So we'll go back to 2 slides, Sarah, thanks. So what I wanted to quickly address here is, we talked about the restoration of the boundaries there in October of 2021 last year. So what have we been doing so far? We've really been, striving to develop that relationship with the Bears Ears commissioners like Hank Stevens and Vice Chair Craig Andrews, in the development of anything that we're doing here in this management plan for Bears Ears National Monument. We've had some meetings with them, and trying to engage with them and incorporate their thoughts and ideas and their land management plan that's been shared with us and publicly, incorporate those into this management planning process. And so there's different aspects of this process that they've been heavily engaged with us. And so, like the analysis of the management situation, they're on the 3rd bullet. That document provides a summary of the resource conditions in the planning area and how those resources are currently being managed. And that AMS, analysis of the management situation, the intent is to have that published on our EPlanning website in the next, before the end of the month, somewhere towards the end of the month here in September, so that the public, all of you folks can review that, and that'll help support any of the comments that you have during this scoping period. So we appreciate a lot of the feedback that the Bears Ears Commission has had on a document like that, the analysis of the management situation. And the other thing to keep in mind, I mentioned this, 2020, we had the management plans for the boundaries of Bears Ears National Monument that existed then. There's also some other management plans that are in place that are the current management of Bears Ears National Monument until we have a new management plan in place for the monument. And so we have management plans in the Monticello field office for the BLM. Our resource management plan from 2008 is still applicable, as long as we are still protecting monument objects and values and in conformance with the presidential proclamation. And there is also a little bit of land kind of in that northern portion of the monument boundaries that actually extends into the Moab field office. And so that Moab resource management plan from 2008 also applies. And then the National Forest, they have their land and resource management plan from 1986, which is also concurrently undergoing, they're doing forest plan revision at the same time right now. And so, it's a unique opportunity for all of us, the Forest Service, the Bears Ears Commission, the BLM, working together to develop a resource management plan, and working with you all, the public, finding ways to best manage this landscape. I think that's the purpose of this meeting today. And this scoping period is to hear from you, the public, what are some of the issues and concerns that you have, and how can we incorporate that into this management plan and find ways to address those in a range of alternative options of management strategies to best manage this landscape, to protect the objects and the values that this monument was designated for. And so I thank everybody for joining, and I'm going to pass it over to Scott Whitesides, our project manager, and he's going to get in a little more detail of the purpose and need of this plan and some other NEPA specifics, some land use planning specifics. So Scott, I'll hand it over to you, but thanks everybody.
Okay, thank you very much, Jake. And so talking a little bit about the purpose and need. So one of the things that we are looking at in terms of as we develop the range of alternatives, those alternatives need to meet the purpose and need for why the monument was established. So just looking through and reading through this slide, the purpose and need for us doing this RMP for both the BLM and the Forest Service is to provide that management framework. Within that framework, we're identifying goals, objectives, and the management direction to help guide monument management as it's provided in the Presidential Proclamation 10285 and also the 9558 proclamation. And a big part of this is to provide for that traditional, to include, and as the proclamations point out, to include within that the traditional knowledge and incorporating that into the management of the monument. So the framework of the RMP will help promote the protection and restoration of Bears Ears National Monument landscapes and the objects, emphasizing the importance of those landscapes as a cultural resource in and of itself, while providing for other public uses such as recreational activities to the extent that these are compatible with protecting the Bears Ears National Monument objects and values. So next slide, please. So the following purposes kind of help frame the issue identification and will help us in understanding what some of our needs are in terms of the development of those alternatives, which will then we will then go through and do effects analysis on or analysis on those alternatives and what the potential impacts may be associated with those management directions that we're pointing out in those alternatives. So as we walk through these bullets, some of the principal purposes that we need to be aware of is to protect, restore, enhance the monument's objects and values, both in large, remote, and rugged and connected landscapes. This includes the entire landscape within the monument and the objects and values for which the proclamations 10285 and 9558 established for the monument. Second bullet, you're looking at to protect and restore the historical and cultural significance of the landscape. This includes objects identified in the proclamation, such as numerous archaeological sites, tribal use areas, and other traditional descendant community uses, historic routes, trails, historic inscriptions, and historic sites. We're also looking to protect and restore the unique and varied natural and scientific resources within the landscape. This includes objects identified in the proclamation, such as biological resources, including various plant communities, relic and endemic plants, diverse wildlife, including unique species and habitat that may be covered under the Endangered Species Act for listed species. We're also looking to protect and restore the scenic qualities, including night skies, natural landscapes, the diverse and visible geology, unique areas, and features. We're also tasked with protect and restore important paleontological resources that can be found within the monument. Ensure that the management of these landscapes will incorporate traditional and historic knowledge related to the use and the significance in these landscapes. And also to provide for potential for other uses within the monument, so as long as they provide for the protection to the monument's identified objects and values. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Thank you. So when we're talking about resource management plans, so what are resource management plans? So in essence, the resource management plans, or RMPs for short, guide management actions on our public lands within the planning area. We are doing this under the requirements laid out both under the Federal Land Policy and Management Act, or FLPMA, which requires BLM to maintain and revise as needed and necessary the RMPs. We have guidance within our land use planning handbook for the BLM that helps us direct us in how to formulate resource management plans. And because this is a national monument, this also falls under the National Conservation Landscape System, which gives us further guidance on how we look at managing those special landscapes that have been identified via proclamation or congressionally. So next slide, please. So why do we need the RMP? Again, it helps us. It helps us in terms of establishing our management direction. The proclamation also required it. So Proclamation 10285 indicated that we will develop a new plan in cooperation with both the U.S. Forest Service and with the Bears Ears Commission. So this is a joint effort to develop the new plan. The plan helps establish management goals, objectives, management directions, and then that helps us ensure that we're in conformance with what the proclamation and helps guide those future management actions. The RMPs also helps us respond to new issues, changes in laws, regulation, or policy, or in changes in circumstances. It allows us to take those actions into consideration and look at how the plan can best respond to those needs as they come forward. It's also to provide for an analysis and support for the BLM and USDA Forest Service in identifying allowable and sustainable uses. So one important aspect of the resource management plan is it helps establish what types of activities can occur within the monument. So in terms of land use allocations, what areas can support certain types of activities while meeting that purpose and need of the protection, restoration, and conservation of those objects. The plan also helps establish a balance between those different resources uses. So for example, what we mean there is if there's a potential conflict between two different types of resources use, the plan, the resource management plan helps us determine which or what types of uses are appropriate within a given area within the monument. And it also provides the basis for legal defensible project level decisions. So when we have project level or more site specific projects on the monument, whether it be the development of an interpretive site, the improvement of a facility, or doing some type of restoration activity on the site, those types of activities have to conform with the resource management plan. So it gives us not only direction, but a basis for defending and implementing certain actions on the monument. Next slide, please. So some of the preliminary planning concerns that have been identified, and these planning concerns are kind of issues that continue to come up that we want to make sure that we're addressing within our resource management plan. The list that I'm going to read off here is not exhaustive, but these are some of the ones that have come up thus far and have been identified. And hopefully, as we go through this scoping period, other issues that we need to be taking into consideration in our planning process can be identified, and also identifying approaches or ways in which we can address some of these issues that keep coming up or concerns. So just to read off, we have cultural resources and Native American religious and cultural concerns. We want to, and those are identified objects within the proclamation. We want to make sure that we're protecting and conserving those, and making sure that the plan addresses how we can best manage those within the monument. overall landscape characteristics. Again, the landscape as a whole is an object. So how do we manage the landscape and the characteristics that make up that landscape while, you know, it's still being used for other purposes, whether it be enjoyment for other activities? How do we manage that landscape to maintain and protect those characteristics? Hydrology is a big one. How do we manage some of the ground, surface water, wetlands, riparian areas, floodplains, etc., that's within the monument? Water is the gift of life throughout most of this area. So this is an important resource that we want to make sure that we adequately address within our RMPs. Wildlife and fuel, wildfire and fuels, forestry and woodland products. This is kind of a catch-all talking about both vegetation, but in terms of what it means in terms of having too much fuel load in a particular area, or how wildfire may affect these areas if we're not able to adequately manage for those. Certainly climate change comes into this as a concern, as well as we're in a sustained prolonged drought, how that affects our fuel loads and potential for having a catastrophic wildfire. How do we try to be proactive about some of these things? So those are some of the questions we'd be asking around those. Wildlife and fisheries. Again, the area is, you know, home to a variety of important wildlife, both large and small in terms of species that are out there. Some that are sensitive or, you know, in special status, potentially threatened or endangered. But how do we best manage for those wildlife conditions? And most of this would be associated with how we think about our habitat within the monument. The same with fisheries and the streams. Other resources, paleontological and geology. This area is known for its paleontological resources and some of its unique geology. How do we manage for those? How do we protect those? Recreation use and visitor services. While this isn't identified as an object, this is certainly something that has a great value in this particular area associated with Bears Ears National Monument. The uniqueness of the landscape, the beauty of the landscape, it draws visitors from around the world. How do we manage that? How do we ensure that we can have sustainable and appropriate visitation and recreation to where we can have that enjoyment, but also and also protecting those objects that may be potentially impacted through recreation. So next slide, please. So just a little bit here on where we're at in the process. So the notice of intent was put out on August 26th. The notice of intent is what started our scoping period. So right now we're in the scoping period right now, and it'll be a 60-day scoping period. While we're also in the scoping period with the public, this is where we're also working with the Bears Ears Commission, other tribal nations, and our cooperating agencies, which includes the state, local counties and local government, to ask similar questions to what we're asking today. What are some of the issues that we need to identify and consider? How can we develop a range of alternatives to or look at different approaches in which we can manage for the protection of these objects within the monument? So this process will be going on over the next 60 days, and then we'll move into development of the range of alternatives. Those range of alternatives will then be analyzed in an EIS, and then there'll be a draft EIS that is put out in the spring of 2023. And then there'll be a 90-day public comment period on that draft EIS and draft RMP. After the closure of the 90-day public comment period, the agencies take into consideration those comments, address those comments, where you would then be revising or incorporating suggestions, comments that can come in into the proposed RMP and final EIS. The final EIS, proposed RMP final EIS will be released. We're targeting early 2024, where there would be a 30-day protest period and a 60-day governor's consistency review. Those run concurrent with one another. After the completion of the 60-day governor's consistency review, the BLM and the USDA Forest Service can reach a record of decision. I will note, I did forget this component, but when the final EIS proposed RMP comes out, the USDA Forest Service would also be putting forward a draft ROD, record of decision. So. And let's see, I think, next slide, please. And at this point, I think the next slide, I will turn it over to Ryannell, Forest Supervisor. Thank you.
Yeah, and Ryan,
Great.
before you get started, I just want to remind everyone who's joined us today that they can find more information about the project and review the associated documents and comment on the EPlanning website. And just to give that website URL one more time, it's https://bit.ly/3 capital U, lowercase a, capital N, capital L, lowercase k, and capital D. Thanks, Ryan.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah. This slide, the picture on there was a very special day. That was June 18th, 2022. And just really an awesome day here. We've got representation from the Bears Ears Commission. We've got Undersecretary Dr. Homer Wilkes for the USDA, and we've got Tracy Stone Manning. She's the BLM director, and this was just an awesome day. We've got a signed cooperative agreement with the Bears Ears Commission, as well as we did a sign unveiling that day. So it's probably the highlight of my career here on the forest that day, and I hope it was special to all the others that were involved. Tribal engagement's been the most satisfying part of this whole planning process. I think we've really looked at a different way of engaging tribes in the planning process early, and we're not showing them a plan that's done and say here you go. They're involved from day one. And so we've met in Albuquerque, I think back in March. You know, Commissioner Stevens and Andrews were there, I believe. And we've stayed in contact ever since. So Bears Ears Commission is comprised of the Ute Mountain Ute, the Hopi, Navajo, Zuni, and the Northern Ute tribes. We also deal with 32 tribal nations on a government-to-government basis. That does not, just because there's 5 tribes, the Bears Ears Commission does not nullify our obligations to engage in government-to-government with other tribes. So just want to make that clear. Next slide, please. We also have a lot of stakeholders, and certainly the public and people joined in today, as well as elected officials or Senators Lee and Romney, as well as Representatives Moore, Stewart, Curtis, and Owens. The state of Utah and the counties and some cities have been involved too as cooperating agencies, and those include Utah's Public Lands Policy Coordination Office, more commonly known as PLIPCO, the School and Institutional Trust Lands Administration, also known as SITLA, the Utah State Historic Preservation Office, San Juan and Grand counties, as well as the cities of Blanding, Bluff, and Monticello are federally designated advisory committee, the Bears Ears National Monument Advisory Committee. We have those meetings as well as the federal agencies, the National Park Service, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, U.S. Bureau of Reclamation, and the U.S. Department of Energy. Next slide. And these upcoming public scoping meetings, the next one is next Wednesday, September 28th. That'll be in person in Blanding, Utah at the Arts and Events Center. Wednesday, October 5th will be another virtual meeting like this one. That will be from 6 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. And that is at https://bit.ly/3pvgjqy. That is the registration link.
Hi,
And
Scott. Sorry, Ryan. I'm just gonna barge right in here. I think I got that wrong on the last one, and I wanted to correct it here too. Those are forward slashes. So for Wednesday, October 5th, 2022, the Zoom for the government meeting is going to be https://bit.ly/3 lowercase p, capital V, lowercase g, capital J, lowercase q, lowercase y.
Thanks, Sarah.
You bet.
That's the biggest mistake I make today. I'll be happy. And then finally, Wednesday, October 12th, we'll be meeting in person from 6 to 8 p.m. at the Marriott at Albuquerque at 2101 Louisiana Boulevard, Northeast, Albuquerque, New Mexico, 87110. And I'll pass it to my friend Scott.
Thank you, Ryan. So in terms of how to submit comments, so as we're going through the comment period, again, we're in the going through our comment period now. You may submit comments by using our EPlanning website, which is again the address is https://eplanning.blm.gov/eplanning-ui/project/2020/347/510.
Yeah, sorry, Scott. I'm just
You
going to
got them
jump back
wrong
in.
again. Okay, they're
Yep.
forward
So again,
slashes.
those are
Okay.
forward slashes. Yep, those are forward slashes. And so I'll give you the short URL again for the EPlanning website, and that's https://bit.ly/3 capital U, lowercase a, capital N, capital L, lowercase k, capital D.
Okay.
Sarah, just for folks on the call, can you just explain why we're spelling everything out there?
Yeah, and just for the folks on the call, we've got some folks who are joining us by phone, and just want to make sure that everyone gets all of this information, whether they're joining us in person or joining us by video rather, or over the phone, or for anyone who may have a visual impairment.
So in addition, you may also send comments via regular mail. So for some of us who have that option is there. And that can be sent to Bureau of Land Management, Bears Ears National Monument, P.O. Box 7, Monticello, Utah, 84535. Questions, accommodation requests. You can also email BLM_Utah_MT let me restate that. BLM_UT_comments@blm.gov. Okay, but bear in mind that this is for questions or accommodation requests, emailing comment. This is not for comment submittal. Please use the EPlanning website we identified earlier as the location for submitting comments. And as a reminder, comments must be received by October 31st, 2022. Next slide, please. So what are we looking for in terms of comments? Substantive comments, we want to make, we were looking at raise issues that the BLM USDA Forest Service has not yet identified. Provide information to help us in the development of alternatives. So management suggestions, approaches to management, how to suggestions for how to protect, conserve, or restore a particular area, things like allowable uses that we should be considering, or areas where they're appropriate versus would be less appropriate. Provide information to consider for impacts of the alternatives. So if we're allowing a certain type of activity, what potential impacts may be associated with that. What we're not looking for or is not helpful in terms of the development of the alternatives and the management plan is offering just an opinion. Whether you're like in favor of something or against something, we like something or don't like something, that's nice. We appreciate people's feelings and commitment to participating in this process, but it doesn't give us anything to work with. Again, so we're not looking necessarily for comments in favor or against any particular action. What we are looking for is, again, I'll go back to it, is if there's a particular action you think that should be occurring, like we think you should allow camping in such and such area, in area X, give us a reason why, not just that, oh, we should have this over here. So why should we be considering that an area? How is it important to you or to the area? How can it better protect the resources? So those are the types of things we're looking for in terms of a substantive comment. And we jumped a slide. There we go. Just a couple more things. Like I said, comments without justification or supporting data. And also we're not, avoid comments that don't pertain to the planning or planning area or the scope of the EIS. So this is for Bears Ears National Monument. So if you're commenting on another planning effort in another state, it would not be relevant to this planning effort. So just a FYI. So with that, I'll jump it over and turn it over to Rachel Wooten. Thank you.
Hi, thanks so much. And we'll keep this part pretty quick, but basically we just wanted to give you all a short overview of how to provide comments in e-planning. We know that, online systems can sometimes feel new, and so we'll quickly go over it. The URL we've previously provided, which is the bit.ly link, the https://bit.ly/3 capital U, lowercase a, capital N, capital L, lowercase k, capital D. That's last time I'm going to do it, folks. So sorry about that. But if you go there, that's where you go for your Bears Ears National Monument Resource Management Planning info. And on that page, you'll see a Participate Now button. You'll also see the opportunity to look at product information in the body of the website, as well as on the left-hand side with different tabs, including documents, maps, how to get involved, a timeline, and then that bright green participate now link. All those comments must be received by the 31st of October. Next slide, please, Sarah. When you are on the ePlanning site and after you click participate now, you'll see the documents that are currently uploaded. And the document you can comment on at this point is the notice of intent announcing this planning effort. And you'll see we already have 29 comments actually. So we keep getting more comments thanks to those who've already submitted, but you should be able to just hit that participate now button. And I share with folks, sometimes it's better if you're having issues to try a different web browser or to make sure that there isn't a scroll bar for you to kind of scroll over, because sometimes if your screen, it might be off your screen a little bit. So 2 tips when you're using ePlanning. And we'll go to the next slide. When you get into ePlanning to put in your comments, you can either write your comments in a main box here, or you can upload files if desired, or both. Please put in your first and last name, but you also have the option to add additional information in this on this page. You'll see options to add things, including your email address or organization, things like that, before you hit preview your comments. And that preview button is on the lower right-hand side of the page. Go ahead and go to the next slide, Sarah. Then you'll see the preview of your comments. And this, on this page, you'll see kind of what you've already written, but you also will see a prompt that asks you, are you sure you want to include all this information, including your address, your phone number, email address, or other personally identifiable information, because we cannot guarantee that we'll be able to, withhold that information if asked to do so. So, that's something for you to think about when you're putting in your comments. And then you can hit submit, which is on the lower right. And if we go to the next slide. Now we go to the Q&A. And so Sarah, take it away.
Okay. Thanks, Rachel. Thank you to Scott and Ryan and Jake as well for the presentation. So folks, we've reached the point in our event today where we are ready to take your questions. So I just wanted to walk through very quickly and show you how to submit a question in this Zoom platform. So your first step will be to click the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. You can then type your question and press the send button. And then after pressing send, our panelists will take a look at your question and we'll be answering those live in writing. And just a couple of notes here, please only submit your question once unless the panel asks you to resubmit your question for clarity. It may take us a few minutes for the specialists to process your question and provide an answer. And again, please use that Q&A icon to submit your question. And we have had a few questions come in already, and I'll be going over those in just a moment for the benefit of the folks who are joining us by phone. But before I do that, I do really just want to remind you all that there are other opportunities to offer your questions and comments. And just to note that the panel will take all the questions that they can in the time that we have today. But if you have additional questions or your questions were not answered today, we invite you to please consider one of these options. So again, there will be another event on Wednesday, September 28th, 2022 from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. at the Utah State University building in Blanding, the Arts and Event Center there. And that address is 576 West 200 South in Blanding, Utah, 84511. There will also be an event on Wednesday, October 5th, 2022 from 6 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. This will be a Zoom for government meeting, and the URL for that is up on the screen and also provided at the ePlanning website. So I'll just read it quickly here. It's https://bit.ly/3 lowercase p, capital V, lowercase g, uppercase j, lowercase q, y. And then the final event for this, for scoping for this project will be held on Wednesday, October 12, 2022 from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. at the Marriott in Albuquerque. The address for that is 2101 Louisiana Boulevard Northeast in Albuquerque, New Mexico, 87110. And just to note, if you have additional questions, there's contact information on the screen for Scott Whitesides, the BLM project manager, who can be reached at 801-539-4054 or S Whitesides, WHITESIDES @blm.gov. You can also reach Jake Palma, BLM Field Manager, at 435-587-1539 or JEPALMA@blm.gov. And finally, you can reach Michael Engelhardt, who's again not joining us today because he's out on a fire detail. He's with USDA Forest Service, Manti LaSalle, District Ranger. And his phone number is 435-210-0800, or his email, Michael, MICHAEL .Engelhardt, ENGELHART at BLM, or sorry, at USDA.gov. And so beginning the question and answer portion of our webinar here today, I'm going to start with some questions and responses that were submitted ahead of time by folks when they registered for this event. So the first question we have today comes from Stan A. Stan asks, how can damage to archaeological sites and sensitive soils from woodcutters driving off-road be addressed in the plan? Jake, is that something you'd like to help us with?
Yeah, certainly. Thanks, Sarah, and Stan, thank you for the question if you're on tonight or this afternoon. I think it's a really important question, and it brings up some good points. I think the presidential proclamations have identified firewood and firewood gathering as objects and values that need to be managed for and protected. And so with that said, the BLM, the Forest Service, we've also documented issues with driving off-road related to wood cutting and gathering in the Bears Ears area. And so this is a perfect example of the usefulness of this planning process. There's multiple objects and values that are potentially in conflict here. And so we need to find a strategy that protects the woodland resources, the archaeology, the soils, and also the gathering traditions that are here in this Bears Ears landscape. And so I think this is an issue that can be addressed in the range of alternatives for this resource management plan. And we look forward to hearing from you, Stan, and others who have similar concerns if they have specific ideas on how to address this type of an issue with wood cutting in the monument. But outside of this planning process for this management plan for Bears Ears, we, the federal agencies, are also exploring other avenues, partnerships to be able to address these resource concerns and provide fuel wood to individuals and communities who need it. As we do different projects within the landscape, how can we utilize some of that wood to help the communities that rely on that wood? So we're exploring even outside of this management planning process how to address this. But I appreciate the question, Stan, and hopefully that's helpful. And we look forward to hearing from you and others in your comments that you submit. So thank you.
Thank you, Jake. The next question that we have that came in from someone who registered for this meeting is a question from Stephen S. And Stephen asks, to what extent will a visitor new to Bears Ears National Monument see, feel, and understand what a co-managed national monument really is? Jake, is that something you'd like to help with?
Yeah, I think it's a great question, Stephen. It's in thinking about that question, I kind of, let me approach it maybe from a roundabout way here, Stephen, but we encourage, and we would like to encourage all visitors to stop here at the Monticello field office in Monticello, Utah, recognizing that that may not always be realistic for some visitors, maybe coming from the south, but as much as possible, if folks want to get information, we would love to see people stop into the office here in Monticello, Utah before they visit Bears Ears National Monument. One, that's an opportunity. They'll be able to get maps and learn about areas that meet their skill sets and also the capabilities of their vehicles. Surprisingly or not surprisingly, we get folks stranded out in the landscape with not adequate water or equipment or vehicles in the locations they're at. So one, they can get better information. Two, they can get additional information about the Bears Ears region and why this place is a sensitive and special cultural landscape and how they can better visit this place with more respect. So I think visitors should start their Bears Ears experience with that kind of an understanding that this is a remote location and it has limited services and in many cases limited signage. So I think this indirect management technique, it's a strategy that we can use that can help limit visitation in certain sensitive areas. But there's also some areas of the monument that are directly off busy highways and easier access where they see more visitation. In some of those areas, we could utilize those spaces as quote unquote portal areas that we can capture a large amount of visitors and help them understand, educate them a little bit on the story of Bears Ears and this concept of collaborative management with the Bears Ears Commission of Tribes and what that means and how they can learn from tribal nations on the landscape so we can increase signage in some of those areas and interpretation so that folks can better understand that. And so I think, in many instances, visitors may not recognize the outright effects of collaborative management on the landscape, but I think these relationships between BLM, Forest Service, the Bears Ears Commission, and tribal nations in general, I think as we work together, we'll be able to improve the management on the ground of Bears Ears National Monument, as well as future decisions of general management of Bears Ears National Monument as well. So hopefully that answers your question a little bit, Stephen. Working closely with the Bears Ears Commission and tribal nations is going to be critical to the success of the development of this management plan. And if you have suggestions on how to better incorporate this into our management plan, look forward to hearing from you on that front as well. But appreciate the question and hopefully that was a helpful answer for you.
Thank you, Jake. So the next question comes from Mike W. Mike asks, tourists are coming to the area. How are you going to protect fragile and prehistoric sites? Ryan, is that something you could answer for Mike?
Yeah, I'd take a stab at that one. Thanks, Sarah. So I like most public lands across this country, visitation to Bears Ears has seen a steady increase over the last decade or so. It's really, I'll be frank, it's gotten a lot more visitation since the proclamations. A lot of that visitation is specifically interested in viewing the archaeological resources and learning about the cultural history. And so the agencies, BLM, Forest Service, have been undertaking efforts over the past few years to increase educational opportunities. I think, education is certainly a big key. I think people unknowingly go into areas a lot of times, and they don't mean to do harm, but sometimes they do. So those educational opportunities are very important to increase awareness on how to visit the landscape respectfully and appropriately. We're working on providing some virtual site tours with a strong educational component to them and improving signage throughout the monument. This resource management plan is clear in the presidential proclamation that recreation identified as an important use in the region, but that is not an object or value. The objects and values are really the critical things. So this management planning process identifies a range of alternatives that explore different recreational management strategies to balance protection of objects and values and recreational use. For example, the draft plan could consider alternatives that include adjustments to access and education for visitors. And certainly we look forward to hearing ideas from you on how to address these education, cultural site visitation concerns, and recreation uses in general. I would say that it's one of the largest struggles as a land manager is when you've got desirable land out there that people are going to come see, and they want to see it as it is. They don't want it behind gates. They don't want it paved and things like that, but also trying to keep it protected. And I think that's a dilemma that land managers have dealt with for many years. And we continue to do that. And any suggestions, certainly the Monument Advisory Committee wrestles with this, as well as the Bears Ears Commission. And so appreciate the question, and it is certainly on the forefront of our minds. Thanks.
Thank you, Ryan. So we have another question that's come in during the Q&A today from Dave C. And I'm going to read the question and the written response out loud just for the benefit of the folks who are joining us by phone today. So Dave has asked, I'm concerned about guides that bring big climbing groups into the creek, which is Indian Creek. The panel has responded to that question, and the panel's response there is that the BLM has a limited number of special recreation permits within the Indian Creek area, but most of the group sizes are fairly small. While 12 is the largest climbing group size in recent years, most groups are 5 or less. The final plan may address group sizes and recreation within the monument. So thanks, Dave, for your question. And then the next question that we have comes from Kevin K. And Kevin asks, who will have a say in management? Jake, is that something you could help Kevin with?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you, Kevin, for the question. I think it's an interesting opportunity. As I started off the presentation earlier in the meeting today, we have 3 presidential proclamations essentially, and starting with the very first one in 2016, it created 2 new entities that we, the federal agencies, the BLM and the Forest Service, are required to work with. One of those is the Monument Advisory Committee for Bears Ears National Monument, and this is a 15-member committee that's intended to represent a variety of different interests to provide a balance of recommendations. One, about the development of the management plan for Bears Ears National Monument, and 2, as appropriate, general management of Bears Ears National Monument. The second entity is the Bears Ears Commission, which again, thank you to the commissioners for joining us today. But this is a unique opportunity for us, the federal agencies, to collaboratively manage Bears Ears National Monument with these 5 specific tribes identified in the presidential proclamation. And we now have an agreement, as Ryan talked about, a cooperative agreement with the Bears Ears Commission, intended to provide a way for us, the federal agencies, to collaboratively work with the Bears Ears Commission in the development of the management plan, day-to-day management of the monument and finding ways to integrate traditional knowledge and their special expertise in the management of this landscape. So in a nutshell, that's kind of a unique scenario for a national monument. We have a jointly managed monument between two federal agencies, the Forest Service and the BLM, and then also an advisory committee that is managed under the Federal Advisory Committee Act, as well as the Bears Ears Commission of Tribes. And so in addition to that, though, we, the federal agencies, will consult with all 32 tribal nations that we typically consult with, and those that wish to participate in this process. We will engage with them in this process, as well as cooperating agencies. So Ryan, I think, went over this list earlier, but it's folks like the state of Utah, San Juan County, Grand County, the cities, local communities, and some other organizations, National Park Service. And so those organizations will also be engaged with in the development of this management plan. And there's many other stakeholders. All of you as the public have a say, and this is one of the steps in that public process for you all to participate in this public process of the development of this resource management plan. So this is part of your participation in this planning effort is part of the management of Bears Ears National Monument. And so unique situation here with the entities that were developed by the presidential proclamation, and then also following our guidance is to maximize these opportunities for public engagement throughout this process and engage with you all and many other organizations as we work to develop this management plan and then future implementation plans after this plan is done as well. So on the ground efforts, we look forward to engaging with all of these groups throughout everything that we do here in the monument. So Kevin, thank you for the question. And if you have other thoughts on this topic, anybody on the call, we look forward to hearing from you in your comments during this scoping period. So thank you.
Thanks, Jake. Our next question also comes from Kevin K. Kevin asks, are all of your resource values for EIS analysis already defined? Will suggestions be welcomed? Will your analysis address climate change and extinction trends? Scott, is that something you could help us with?
Sure. Thanks for the question, Kevin. So from the top of the question, in terms of have all of our resource issues been identified? No, they have not. What I presented today are primarily issues that have come up internally within the agencies and in a discussion with the Bears Ears Commission, as well as some of our other partners and cooperating agencies. Certainly, it is not an exhaustive list of issues that we've identified. If there are other issues that you think we need to be considering or addressing, by all means, please provide those as part of your comments. Excuse me. In terms of climate change, yes, climate change will be addressed in the resource management plan. Both looking at how actions that we are allowing on the monument may have contributing factors to climate change, but more importantly, how do we respond to climate change that's occurring? What areas can we be proactive in terms of our management in relationship to climate change is out there? And tied to that, where you're talking about extinction trends, one of the things that we need to be aware of and cognizant of is threatened endangered species and potential habitats that are located within the monument. So from within that context, yes, we would be looking at that as well.
Thanks, Scott. Scott, since we have you, I'll ask another one from Kevin. And his question is there an affected environment description developed that can be reviewed by the public?
So the affected environment will be a component of the EIS that basically describes the current landscape, right? That will be coming with the EIS. But what I will say is that here at the end of the month, we mentioned it earlier, we'll have up on our EPlanning webpage the analysis of management situation, or the AMS. And what that will do is it helps us define what the affected environment is. So it's going to identify current conditions, and then also it will also look at what trends we're seeing associated with the current conditions in there. So that will be the first look that is giving information that will help influence or help us excuse me, establish our affected environment that will be in the EIS section. So I hope that helps.
Thanks, that's great. So next up, we have a question from Michael H. that was submitted when Michael registered for the meeting. So Michael asks, will the plans address grazing? What grazing utilization be? So what will grazing utilization be? Jake, is this a question you could answer for Michael?
Yeah, I think so. Michael, thank you for the question. Grazing is one of the many uses happening here in the Bears Ears landscape. It's a use that's been ongoing here for a long time and has a lot of deep ties to a lot of the communities here in the Bears Ears region. But I think as it relates specifically to this management plan, I'll read directly from the presidential proclamation to show what that says about grazing, and then maybe expand a little bit on that. But the presidential proclamation says that the secretary shall manage livestock grazing as authorized under existing permits or leases and subject to appropriate terms and conditions in accordance with existing laws and regulations, consistent with the care and management of the objects identified above in Proclamation 9558 and 10285. And so, I think, the proclamation gives some good guidance for us in terms of the development of this management plan, is that livestock grazing should be a use that is considered to continue here under the existing permits and leases, but that it has to be consistent with the protection of the monument objects and values. So in this planning process, these are things that we can consider in our range of alternatives and bringing up issues. If you see some specific issues that need to be addressed, identify those for us, send us some comments, and we can look at addressing those in our range of alternatives and in the issues that are considered. There's different management strategies or options that we can consider, based on the frequent data that we collect yearly out on the landscape. Are there areas that we can consider available versus unavailable to grazing, and what kind of grazing management can we use in terms of pasture rotations, fencing, water sources, all these different types of things, timing, resting different areas. So I think these are all strategies that we can consider, and knowing that this is an issue that you would like to raise in this planning process, and something that we can explore a little further as we develop the environmental impact statement for this resource management plan. So thank you for the question, Michael, and we look forward to addressing that further in this planning process.
Thanks, Jake. I appreciate it. So the next question that we have comes from Kent B. So Kent's question is, how will non-street legal ORVs be managed within the boundaries? Scott, is this a question you could answer for Kent?
Sure. So go ahead and restate the question one more time. for
Sure
me.
thing. So Kent asks, how will non-street legal ORVs be managed within the boundaries?
Okay, non-street legal. Gotcha. Okay, so one thing we'll be looking at within the RMP is where is OHV a use appropriate? So what we mean by that is that at the RMP level, you'll look at areas that would be closed to OHV use, would limit OV use, or the third option is open. Don't anticipate anything being open because it is inconsistent with the objects and values of the monument itself. And open means open range, essentially can go anywhere, right? And so limited, you would have routes that are determined to be appropriate. What's important to recognize, though, is that route designations, either those that are already designated, or if we were to consider changing how those current route designations occur, that would be step-down planning for travel management planning. And travel management planning also starts to take into consideration things like, other than just OHVs, but other modes of transportation on the landscape, whether it be trails, horse trails, bike trails, pedestrian trails, airstrips fall into that category as well, those types of things. So that would be a step down planning. At this level, it would be looking at where those areas would be appropriate to allow some form of OHV use to occur. And most of the area right now already has a designation on it. And so we'd be looking at those designations and seeing if they're still appropriate, meaning are they open, closed, or limited. And the majority of the majority of the monument right now is limited or closed for OHV. And so we'd be looking at it in those categories.
Thanks, Scott.
You're welcome.
So our next question is also one that was submitted along with a registration. And for this question, I'm hoping that Ryan and our commissioners can provide a response. So if you'd all like to turn your videos on, that would be wonderful. Commissioner Stevens and Commissioner Andrews. So the question is from Gabisha M. And Gabesha asks, how will the BLM and USDA Forest Service work with tribes? How is the Tribal Land Management Plan being included in the official Monument Management Plan? How are the coalition tribes officially being represented in the management planning of Bears Ears? Commissioner Stevens or Commissioner Andrews, would you like to respond to this question at all about how BLM and Forest Service are working with tribes or working with the commission?
Yes, hello.
Hello.
I'm trying to unmute myself here.
It's okay. Sometimes it takes a moment.
Yes, I just heard the question, so I was gonna, can you repeat the question one more time, please? I'm sorry.
Sure. The question is, how are BLM and USDA Forest Service working with tribes? Let's start with that.
Okay, sure. I think it was stated by Jake earlier. This is a very unique situation that we're at right now. And coming to the table for the tribes and for the agencies, you know, it's we've had a few meetings already started on addressing some of these issues, and I like the questions that were asked earlier by other individuals. So those are all the questions or all the issues. I don't want to say issues yet, but you know, those are the items that we're currently addressing. So right now we're on a good path. I believe we're on a good path, And, I've said it before at our other meetings, there's going to be a little give and take in certain situations, but, that's the reason why we're having these meetings set pretty much, close together. This is a work in progress. Right now, I believe it's going very, very well with the agencies, and pretty much open to anybody, any suggestions, and listening to one another, and talking from our hearts. Because, it was stated before, the land manages us, not us managing the land. So I think that's something that I really do believe in. I think that's a very, very good question. And if I answered that correctly, I tried my best to answer your question there for that portion. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Stevens, do you have anything to add?
Sure. I do believe that this public comment call that we're actually on today is a good example of co-management, where we're able to actually collaborate, from the tribal perspective to the agencies, and also to the outside world, meaning the Western world. And through this consultation, I think this can be accomplished. And also the tribe's land management plans, which was actually given to the BLM and the Forest Service, actually suggests that we, as people on Earth, have to reevaluate the existing plan that we had with BLM and the Forest Service, and collaboration with indigenous knowledge and indigenous teaching into this plan is probably imminent, because we all share all the elements that's here on Earth and above, meaning the universe. So this is something that's real critical to human life, and not just human life, but every living form here on Earth. Even animals and whatnot that actually live in the water. So, which also helps in improving our relationship, not just with the land, but also the people and the communities and the public, which, we had 84 people on this call earlier. So hoping that these numbers will actually continue to increase. And I think one of the things that I kind of like to talk on is the question about wood harvesting, firewood. And that's a good question. Now, when BLM and the Forest Service actually initiated their RMP and that mine management plan, there was no consideration given to tribal perspectives. In other words, the tribes didn't have any input in this mine management plan. So everyone that went into the mine had the idea that you just grab a chainsaw and cut down the wood and take it home, and that's where erosion comes in. And that's a good question. How do we minimize the erosion on land? But as we move forward with the discussion, the collaboration with the BLM and the Forest Service, we need to identify each tree. And from there, we can actually look at the one particular tree and get an understanding from the tribal perspective of what these trees actually represent. And I go out to Oklahoma and Nebraska for different ceremonies, and there's always that notion that we look at a teepee as something that's very unique and whatnot. But there's a whole lot of stories into these that makes that teepee, the teepee poles, and how they're harvested and what they represent. And these are discussions that we need to have with BLM and the Forest Service, so we can actually have some type of a cross-cultural orientation with the folks at the agency, so they understand what we mean by the sacredness of the land. And we use the word object as a it's something that has to be seen or feel or touch. An object can be something that you don't even see, like that spirit that's within the human body. That's an object, but you don't see it, but it actually supports the human body. Where it's the same situation with a tree. It has a spirit. This land has a spirit. This land has to have air to breathe. But these are some of the discussions where, take an example of the tree, identifying each tree and what they represent, at the tribal level, and how we can actually maybe incorporate some type of a plan to maybe, let's say, harvesting firewood for heating, for home use. We need to put a plan together as to how we can actually minimize that erosion. That meaning, maybe just an example, maybe we can bring a nonprofit organization in here. They can do all the wood cutting and everything and store it somewhere close to some of these tribal nations, or even have transport available for the firewood to these tribal nations, where these nonprofits can actually go in there, cut the firewood, and whatever sawdust is there, they can spread it back out and minimize that erosion, and hopefully when the monsoon season comes around, the moisture that's coming down can actually rejuvenate that piece of land. So these are discussions that's just a brief example of what we're talking about when we talk about co-management. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Stevens. Ryan, anything to add?
No, I thank you for your words, Commissioner Andrews and Stevens. I always learn a lot. And I really appreciate the dialogues we have. We've got a meeting this Friday where we're going to talk some more about alternatives, and we have a pretty aggressive time frame for doing this resource management planning, and everybody's really committed to it. I will say that's been refreshing. I know it's moving kind of warp speed for me, and I know it is for everybody else too, but I appreciate everybody's engagement. I think really this tribal land management plan that's been submitted is really central to what we're using for a lot of our planning efforts. And it's a different way of looking at things. We look at things with a kind of Western science-based planning, and it's really forced us to look at things in a different way, which I think is going to give us a better product in the long run. And so looking forward to continuing to use the traditional knowledge and expertise that the tribes provide in developing these plans. And I really think it's going to be a stronger outcome for all our efforts. So I appreciate the opportunity to present today, and I'll flip it back to Sarah.
Thanks, Ryan. Well, noting the time, I see that we have reached the end of our meeting time. And just in closing, I want to remind everyone on the phone today that if you have additional questions or comments, please submit your questions through the EPlanning site that we've shared again in the chat, and we've shared earlier in the call. And then if you are interested in attending another scoping meeting, we invite you to join on Wednesday, September 28th, 2022 from 6 to 8 p.m. at the Utah State University Blanding Arts and Events Center at 576 West 200 South, Blanding, Utah, or to join the call on Wednesday, October 5th, 2022 from 6 p.m. to 7:30 p.m., which is Zoom for a government meeting. https://bit.ly/3 lowercase p, uppercase v, lowercase g, uppercase j, q, y, lowercase q, lowercase y, or to join on Wednesday, October 12th, 2022 from 6 to 8 p.m. in the Marriott Albuquerque at 2101 Louisiana Boulevard Northeast in Albuquerque, New Mexico, 787-110. And finally, if you have additional questions or your question was not answered today, please contact Jake Whitesides, the BLM project manager, at 801-539-4054, or his email is swhitesides, so WHITESIDES @blm.gov. You can also contact Jake Palma, who you heard from today, the BLM field manager, at 435-587-1539, or JEPALMA@blm.gov. Or you can reach Michael Engelhardt, who wasn't able to join us today. He's from USDA Forest Service, Manti-LaSalle District Ranger. His number is 435-210-0800, or Michael Engelhardt, MICHAEL.Engelhardt, ENGELHART @USDA.gov. And so in conclusion, I just want to give a big thank you to all of our panelists and specialists for being on hand today to share a presentation and to share their knowledge and to answer questions for the participants, and to thank you, the participants, for joining us today with your excellent questions and for taking the time to participate today. And so with that, I will ask the members of our panel to go ahead and turn their videos on and give a wave as we say goodbye. So thank you again, everyone, for joining us. Thank you.